So, class on golden doves. It's been a while. I think we're class 126, and we're on page 71. So let's just get back into it. I think it's at the bottom of page 71. The analogy of the conventional or artificial view of language with Saussure's theory concerning the arbitrariness of the linguistic sign is obvious, right? So Saussure speaks about how linguistic signs are arbitrary, right? That's Saussure's theory of language. How there is no relationship between the word telephone and the actual telephone. It's not to say that the word doesn't, telephone, right? So there's something there in why they chose that word. So we don't mean to say that it's completely unrelated, but rather that it could have been a different word. I mean, there could have been many, many different sounds that we could have used to describe telephone, right? So, for example, tapuz. So tapuz in Hebrew refers to an orange. So tapuz means tapuach zahab. So do I mean to say that there's no relationship between the word tapuz and the orange? Well, there is a relationship. They chose that word because the orange is kind of shaped like an apple, in their thinking at least, right? And it's a tapuach zahab, it's a golden apple, right? So tapuz, okay. Putting aside how true that is, but it doesn't matter. It didn't have to be tapuz, right? Right? So according to Ferdinand de Saussure, there's a certain arbitrariness. I think that's something we can kind of agree with. Right? So there's a conventionality also, there's an artificiality in language. We see that all in the word tapuz. However, the term conventional or artificial avoids the pitfalls connected with the choice of the term arbitrariness, so grossly misnamed in the words of Derrida, right? But there's a problem when you say that the word tapuz is arbitrary in regards to the actual fruit called orange. It's not a good choice of words by Ferdinand de Saussure. It's not really completely arbitrary. It may be conventional, meaning there is a relationship between the word tapuz and the orange, in so much as the orange visually looks like a apple of a golden color. Again, put aside whether you agree with that or not the point. But the point is, it's not completely arbitrary. And that's why Derrida, he points out that Saussure's choice of the word arbitrary to describe the relationship between the linguistic sign and that which is being signified is itself, I guess, a bad choice of words. A better word is conventional, because conventional means, yes, there is no necessary relationship, but we decided to use the word tapuz. So we're not saying it's completely arbitrary, we're saying it's not arbitrary, but it's also not necessary. Instead of calling it a tapuz, I could have called it something else for some other reason, right? Right. So that's the point of the difference between artificiality or conventional on the one side, which Derrida criticizes Saussure for not choosing one of those words and arbitrarily choosing the word arbitrary, if I may be an attempt at humor. The finer points of the theory of language and the specific relationship between the linguistic sign and what it represents will be best understood upon an analysis of the two levels of language. So this is really an amazing section right now. This is really old Sephardi thinking, right? So what's the relationship between the word and that which is being signified? So again, according to Saussure, arbitrary. Comes Jacques Derrida and says, and my father agrees with Jacques Derrida, it's not really arbitrary, right? Let's call it conventional. We chose to use the word tapuz. We could have chosen a different word, but we chose, for different reasons, we chose the word tapuz for this and this reason, so it's not arbitrary because there's actual reason for the choice of the word tapuz, but it could have been a different word, right? In order to understand this, and by the way, I want to say that just because we quote Jacques Derrida, same way as we might quote Aristotle, doesn't mean that we agree with everything that Jacques Derrida stands for. I actually disagree, and I'm pretty sure, having discussed with my father, that he disagreed with many, many points of Jacques Derrida. A lot of these postmodernists, they were trying to basically inject Marxism into modern thinking by recouching it as postmodernism. So I have to say that I'm aware of that. And that just because we quote Jacques, so there's people who hate Bibi Netanyahu, and Bibi Netanyahu is the worst. He's the devil. He should be thrown in jail and burnt alive, and we still would hate him, and that wouldn't be enough. Similarly with, let's say, Donald Trump. Oh my gosh, he's so horrible. He destroyed the world, and everything is just horrible, 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 horrible. Let's put him in jail for 700 years. If we need to inject him with something to keep him alive so that we can keep him in jail for 700 years, we'll do it. And then you have people, Bibi, Rak Bibi. Bibi is the greatest. He's greater than the Messiah and Moshe Rabbeinu and everything. That whole put together, Bibi is the greatest. Okay. Or with Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the greatest man that ever lived, greater than George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. By far, far, far greatest spokesperson. So those are two extremes. I'm not into idealizing people. I'm not into demonizing people. I like to judge people, and maybe Bibi did some good things. I hope I didn't offend anybody when I said that. Maybe he did some less good things. I hope I didn't offend anybody. Right? So similarly with Jacques Derrida, we quote Jacques Derrida. Doesn't mean we're Marxists. Chas v'shalom. We're not Marxists. Marxism is, in my view, a very pernicious ideology. And you can feel free to disagree with me. I don't know if there's any Marxists who watch this channel. It's fine. But we try to judge issues and subject matters by the actual content and analyze issues. So Jacques Derrida said something that we agree with, yes. And there's probably other things that he may have said that we agree with. So just want to put that in context. Let's carry on with the class. I had to make that note. As mentioned earlier, there are two levels of language, Sharah and Ma'ana. This is great. So one of the first things you know is when you're like a young Sephardi child studying in the Kitab, there's two levels of reading the Pesukim. There's a Sharah level. The Sharah is somehow, let's call it the Peshat, the simple meaning of the verse, or the actual meaning of the words of the verse, right? And then there's a Ma'ana. Ma'ana is what the words put together mean, right? A little different than the actual meaning, the lexical meaning of each word is, how do we now understand this sentence, right? So there's two ways to study the Pasuk. You study it at the Sharah level, and you study it at the Ma'ana level. That's what we're going to be studying now. We're going to really get into this deeply. And this is so important. I'm actually excited. I'm really excited to be, I remember as a child studying this with my father, so it's, right. Sharah, meaning, is a lexical sense of a term. What does a particular word mean, right? What does a word mean, right? So words have lexical, they have dictionary meanings, and we can look at the dictionary meaning of a word, right? It is intrinsic to every word, and it is immediately recognized by all members of the speaking community. So the Sharah meaning of a word is a conventionality in the sense that we all understand that when I say cell phone, I'm referring to a cell phone, right? It's just conventional meaning. When I say, a cup, I'm referring to a cup. When I say book, I'm referring to a book, because everybody understands, the speaking public understands these words in the way that I spoke these words. So that's Sharah. It's immediately recognized, right? It corresponds to the Zahar, obvious sense of the term. So it's in Arabic you have the word Zahar. I probably mispronounced that word, but it's obvious sense of the term. Again, we could call it the Peshat also. The Peshat in the sense that everybody understands what this word means, right? Veidaber means God spoke, right? We know what that means, right? That's obvious, right? Ma'ana, significance, is the conceptual sense of a term. Interesting. So there's a concept behind a particular term. Maybe not behind a word, but when you put some words together, there's a concept. It corresponds to the button, inner sense. There's an inner sense, right? So you take two words or three words, you put them together, and those three words together have a button, have an inner sense. It is not immediately recognized by older members of the speaking community. Unlike the simple meaning of the words or conventional meaning of words, which immediately we recognize what the words mean, when you put words together, sometimes they're pointing out to something deep. There's a button there. And it requires ta'wil, interpretation, to be properly decoded. A good example is the words, or the term es hayim hila mahazikim ba. Everybody understands the word es. Es means a tree. Hayim, everybody understands, so that's a sharach of the word es, is tree. Everybody understands the word hayim. Hayim means life. What does a tree of life mean? What does that mean? So there's a button there. The es hayim refers to the Torah, which itself is a tree of life. And why is that? So there's a certain concept in the idea of es hayim, right? Tree of life, right? And because the Torah is integrative, it's an integrative system of wisdom, right? So it's like the tree, and it's always growing, it's organic, it's always growing, and there's always a possibility of progress as in a tree. Right? So the idea that you see the difference in sharach, the word es means tree, the word hayim means life, and es hayim a term which has a hidden concept within it, which you have to think about it. It's not just obvious. It is not immediately recognized by all members of the speaking community, and that's why you need ta'wil. Ta'wil means interpretation, to decode the ma'ana of this term. Ma'ana, or ma'ana, plural ma'ane, is expressed through language. So we use words to express concepts which are a bit beyond those words. The sum total of the words, in math, 1 plus 1 equals 2. In language, 1 plus 1 might equal blue, right? It's different. There's a concept. Things point out towards something. Okay. So again, the words concerning it, what is conceived, right? There's words that want to deal with the concept, are either to teach it to others, and now I need to teach this concept to somebody else, and it's a little hard to teach the concept, and I'm using words in an original fashion, perhaps, to try to point out to that person that I'm speaking with what I'm trying to conceptualize in his mind, right? Or to elucidate to himself, and I want to elucidate it to myself, what he had already conceived. So I think of something very deep, and I want to figure out how to express that idea, right? Superior beings communicate ma'ana without language. That's very interesting. Superior beings communicate ma'ana without language. How can you communicate ma'ana without language? But before we even got there, there's a footnote here, footnote 24. So let's see what it is. Right. So this is in the Moneh Nebuchim. Moneh Nebuchim, Helik Aleph, Perek Mem Vav. He discusses that. The need to articulate ma'ana and communicate it linguistically is exclusively human. So superior beings here refers to the malachim. So the malachim, they can transmit a particular ma'ana without the use of words. So perhaps when a malach speaks to a navi, he doesn't use words. He can express the concept directly in the mind of the navi. When we communicate to each other as human beings, we need words. So if I want to express a concept to you, I need to use words to express that concept. This is what Rambam is saying. The need to articulate ma'ana and communicate it linguistically is exclusively human. And now again, quoting Harambam, again in the Moneh Nebuchim, we can neither understand nor perceive the communication of ma'aneh from the soul of one individual to the soul of another individual except through speech. The only way for me to transmit an idea to you is through the words that I choose, which is the sound articulated by the lips, tongue, and other speech instruments. Right? So that's a unique capacity of man to transform concepts into words where the individual words are not reducible to that concept, because the individual words have a different sharah, but put together artfully, I can use those words to point your mind out towards a concept which is beyond those words. So I want to stop here. It's a very deep thing. Think about it, and hopefully we will continue soon.